God has a plan for my life, which will make me happy. Jesus just spoke to me. Now, it wasn't out loud. But he just said, I know what that's like. And I knew that this was Jesus talking to me. Jesus is my best friend, as he has been since I was 11.
Sister Kelly Francis Oslin, you are very welcome.
Thanks, Tony. It's
Everybody
great to be with
can
you.
tell we were just having a good laugh.
You know what struck me whenever you were praying to St. Francis? Why was it St. Francis that your particular order is associated with and not St. Clare, his friend?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. We, because of the friars, first of all, that we're the sisters community, CFR sisters, began out of the Franciscan friars of the renewal being founded, and we really felt called to the charism that they're living. So it was this sense of, we feel drawn to that charism. Is it possible that there could be a female expression of that? And so that was really how we came to be in the church, was through the charism of the friars. And of course, they're following St. Francis. So we feel called to this contemplative, active life, whereas St. Clare was cloistered. She lived the cloistered life. And our community has that contemplative and active, which our friars have, and which we feel called to as sisters. So that's kind of some of the dynamics that are at play there.
Which we're all called to.
That's true.
Funny, the course I'm doing at the moment, that they're the two words that frame the whole course. Contemplation and action.
Yeah, they're both meant to.
And we're looking at, all of the church history, the church fathers, and even St. Paul's writings. And it's like, okay, where do we see contemplation and action? Yeah. There you go. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just distracted by people. There's so many people living in this house now that I'm distracted by all the shouting that's in the hall. But yeah, wow. And what's your story like? How did you come to be a Christian, first of all?
I came to be a Christian because, thanks be to God, I have parents who have profound faith that was really important to them. And so I'm the fourth of 5 children.
Okay.
And I have 3 brothers, 1 sister. And so my parents raised us with faith. So first of all, I had that blessing of being, my mom would tell stories of that when I was newborn, she was able to go to daily mass. And so I went to daily mass as a baby. Wow. I was going to daily mass.
You must have been a really good baby.
Some days I was better than others from what I hear, but just that blessing, I know I received graces from that. Even, it was her love for the mass, and my parents are still daily mass goers, and what a gift.
So good.
So blessed in that way, but then was raised, I had some beautiful things in my childhood. I was raised in a time when the catechesis was not strong, and it wasn't like I could explain and defend my faith by any means, but I had a witness of people who lived what they believed. And that for me, pure gold.
Yeah.
Pure gold to have that growing up.
Isn't that everything? It's no good people pontificating about how good God is if they're behaving like the Antichrist, which I often do. But I'm able to say, look, I really messed up there. I'm really sorry, guys. And I don't know if your parents did that as well.
That's part of the Christian life for sure. Yeah, you're not going to be perfect, and they weren't perfect. They're still not perfect. I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
But that reality
Why'd
that
you
I
do
saw.
that? Pointing at me. You're not.
All of us here in this room,
I know.
no perfect people here except for Jesus is with us.
Amen. And
I
that's
love that you just said that about, the fact that your mum brought you to daily mass. Yeah, such an encouragement for young mums, if they can, to bring their kids to daily mass. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Good. Well, no, it's okay. What I was thinking was that is something that I think led to the downfall of the perceived Christendom aspect of Irish Catholicism. We all had to pretend that we were perfect. And, we particularly put the priests and the clergy on a pedestal. And as much as they said that they weren't perfect, which I don't, I wasn't old enough to remember anybody saying that was the case. So I don't know if that actually happened, but I do know that we did put them up on a pedestal. And I remember hearing about, priestly behavior, which was less than becoming, and we weren't even talking about child sex abuse or anything like that, but it was less than becoming priestly behavior, and thinking, oh my goodness, that's just not possible, And so we had a culture that just didn't let us be human, you know? And I think it's so refreshing what you said about your parents and about yourself. And I think it's really important as well. And as part of the charism of Net is just like we are beautifully made. We are sons and daughters of God. We want to do the good, but we have a tendency to screw up. And we do screw up. And therefore it's important that we learn to apologize.
Yeah, that's right. It's what we do after that. Because it's not a matter of like, will I ever mess up again? But it's like, I will, but then what will I do? You know?
Yeah.
That's what makes you a Christian. It's not the fact that you're perfect and you never make a mistake. It's the way you behave afterwards when you've done something wrong. How do you hide it? Or do you own it up and say, you know?
Or are you even aware of it? Like,
and if someone helps to make you aware of it, are you open to that?
Yeah. Are you taking time to reflect on how you're living? And
do you ever find that gives us a license to behave badly? You know, sometimes like, okay, I'm made of, God loves me, but he knows I'm fallen. Therefore I'm addicted to my phone. I'll be the first to admit it, in a way that's not terrible, but not healthy at the same time. And so, when I look at my phone and I know that I'm looking at my phone, like I'm looking at cars when I'm looking at my phone, it's not that terrible, but at the same time, it's just like, I know I get so much enjoyment from looking at cars, but I know I should be taking that moment to pray, and, or to invest in my family or whatever. I let myself off the hook because I know I'm falling, rather than saying, okay, I need to do better. Do you know what I mean? What would you say to that?
My first thought is virtue lies in the middle. There's a balance that needs to be struck there, that it's not, therefore throw your phone out the window and never use a phone again. And it's easy for me to say, someone who doesn't have I don't have an iPhone, but that there can be the temptation to go like, this thing I've got to just, therefore and sometimes you have to cut off for time to be able to gain a sense of boundaries, or like your own personal ability to, function with something. But also it's not like it's the most virtuous thing to just throw it out the window and say, I'm never going to look at cars on my phone ever again. Like, well, that might not be God's will either. That usually it's that, like, we have to kind of actually, virtue lies in the middle. There's a balance in our life to be struck. And sometimes we need relaxation and we need to peacefully and joyfully, enjoy something that gives us life, and that but without doing it for 5 hours, if it's not something that's really meant to be, and so there's a sense of like, I enjoyed that. That was great. Now I'm going to go enjoy something else. And that doesn't become, like you said, an addiction that's all you ever do.
Yeah.
That would be my first thought, is that kind of that more balanced approach versus, I think right now our world is so kind of extreme to one. It's so much easier to tend to the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So who are the CFR sisters? Like, and what way are you constituted?
I think before we go there, it'd be good to hear how you came to have a vocation, and if that's
first
okay.
things first.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Whenever.
Okay, well, how did I come to have a vocation? So like I said, my family has been a great blessing in my life. And a couple of things that were really key that I've realized as my life has gone on that have really impacted my ability to respond to vocation. I cannot remember a time in my life when I didn't know this truth, which is that God has a plan for my life, which will make me happy.
Wow.
Now, my parents probably maybe said that once or twice, but they lived it. That's how they lived their life. So I've known that from before I could read, before I could think. That's just been the most obvious thing for me. That's like what the water I was raised in is this. God has a plan for your life, and this is what's going to make you happy. And so, just go for that's what we're going for. So I remember growing up, I wanted to be a professional. I was going to be the first woman to play in the NBA, the National Basketball, in professional basketball in the States. I was like, I love basketball. Played it since I was 3. That was my first, what am I going to be when I grow up? And then, and it went on from there. I just always, so it's not like I guess what I'm trying to say is I was a pretty normal kid. I played sports. I, played with my friends and just had a beautiful childhood. Very, very joyful. But as I was a teenager and then getting towards the end of secondary school and things like that, the question always comes what are you gonna do with your life? What are you gonna be? And to me, the I just thought it was the weirdest question because I was like, whatever God wants, like he's going to tell me and then I'm going to do it. Like it's not going to be up to me to decide to have to, but I was like, obviously nobody's thinking this way. But to me, I just thought this is such a strange question to ask people. What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to be? And I'm like, because it was the most obvious thing that God had a plan for my life. And that's what was going to make me happy. So that's what I was going to do. He reveals that over time.
Did your siblings think this way?
I don't know. I'll see them in a couple of weeks. I can ask them.
Ask them.
What a great mantra to speak to your children.
Yeah.
God has a plan for your life and that will make you happy.
And were your parents in any particular socioeconomic stratosphere that would lend to them being particularly happy, which would lead you to believe that that's, is it anything to do with economics?
What does that mean? Oh, economics.
We lived a pretty ordinary life. My dad worked long hours and worked hard. My mom was able to stay at home with us, but we rarely went out to dinner as a family, like, once a year, maybe for someone's birthday or a special occasion. Like it wasn't like we lived in a very wealthy manner. We were not poor. We had what we needed, and
you had the basics.
But we lived simply, and we were very happy with that simplicity. We never had like the internet in our house. We never had. Was the internet invented? Once the internet was invented, we still never had it for a really long, until after I entered the convent. Then it finally, my parents do have it, but it's like, it was, when VHS tapes were a thing, we never had a VCR my whole childhood, which would have been very normal for that time period. And then DVD player, it never, so there wasn't this like chasing after the newest, latest and having it.
So your parents wouldn't have had a consumerist mindset?
Not at all.
And your mom wasn't looking for the next wash machine that was
definitely
better than
Definitely not.
Okay.
So we lived in that way. We lived, like I said, we were not kind of well-to-do or kind of in that way.
Well, you weren't chasing after well-to-do either.
No, like a happy day in the Oslin family was we were all together and we played games and ate food and just were together, us. And we had a great time.
Wow.
We just enjoyed it. So that's the kind of environment. So that's, like I said, all this really fostered just like a very wholesome and very blessed and very beautiful life. My dad's job got moved when I was 11 or 12 years old. We had been living in New Jersey in the States, which is actually where my mom is from. And then his job got transferred up to Massachusetts, which is actually where my dad is from. So we moved. So it wasn't unfamiliar territory, but we moved to a new town and a whole, new place. And that was a really difficult time in my life, where it took me a long time to settle. I didn't make new friends right away. And I had been in this environment previously where everybody knew me. They knew my family. So even if it was like, oh, you're so-and-so's little sister. I'm like, yeah. And I loved being so-and-so's little sister. It was just this family identity that was I was very happy in. But now I'm in this new environment where nobody knows me or my family or anything. And it took me a long time to settle in and make friends and all that. And that was a critical time for me in my relationship with the Lord. So what happened was I had been raised with a sense of a family that had faith. We always went to mass and all these things. And at that time, and I knew this was the other thing that I knew, that God loved me and that Jesus wanted to be my friend. This was the level of catechesis that was going on at that time. But those are important truths. Like that is important,
catechesis builds on those truths.
Yes. Yeah. So I knew that was what, but I hadn't had a personal experience of like knowing Jesus myself or a friendship with him personally. It was just more like, I know that that's what they say. So I found myself in the position where I was going to school. We had moved. We're in our new place, and I would have hard days at school at first, not having friends. You're supposed to do a group project in the classroom and nobody asks you to be in their group, or you go to the lunchroom and there's no one really wants you to sit with them. Just things like that. It wasn't nothing major, but also things that at that time in your life, that's important, and it's hard when it's not there. And so I would go home from school and kind of go up to my room and just recount to myself. I was not praying. I was not thinking of praying. I wasn't trying to pray. I was just reflecting on my day and recounting my miserable woes to myself of like, oh, and then, whatever. There was supposed to be something with, and I didn't have anybody to do that with, or I was feeling all of that. And one day in the course of that reflection of doing that, after school, I got to the end of my miserable woe list, and Jesus just spoke to me. Now, it wasn't out loud. But he just said, I know what that's like. And I knew that this was Jesus talking to me. And he said, I understand what it's like to be rejected. I know what it's like to not have friends there for you that you wish they were. And it was a moment of encounter for me that Jesus was real, that he was my best friend, as I had been told, Jesus is your friend, that actually is true, that he knew me, that he understood what I was experiencing, and that he loved me. And that started for me a relationship with Jesus.
And it was more than just a general thing in the air that your parents said. It was something that you had experienced for yourself.
Personal. It was like the rubber meets the road type of thing where I'm like, I've heard this before, but now, I'm experiencing this for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing this is true. And this Jesus actually knows me and cares about me.
What difference did that make in your life?
I started talking to Jesus. Imagine that.
So instead of recounting to yourself, you started to, okay.
And then it was beautiful as time went on. I just developed this sense of like, I have a friend who really does know me and care about me. And over time, of course, I made new friends and I settled in. It wasn't like I continued to have no friends for the rest of my life, but for that period of time, I do have friends. So that period of time, it was like he let me experience that difficult circumstance because he had something for me that was that I wouldn't trade. Well, that difficulty and that experience of feeling so, all the struggles you'd never want for anybody, but you go, I wouldn't trade that for anything. That's when I received the gift of a relationship with Jesus. That is so real. And over time, then as a teenager, I was around 17, when my parish started having Eucharistic adoration, and I'd never heard of that before. And so we had a permanent deacon at our parish who I was close with, and he was involved in our youth group. And so he mentioned it to me. He said, you should try it. You might like to see what that's like. And he explained it to me and invited me to come. And so I went, and at one point, and it was this experience. I believed that Jesus was present in the Eucharist. I did believe that, but I didn't realize that Eucharistic adoration was a thing, outside of Mass, to go and spend time with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament was just, and that you could see Jesus. All of that was just new news to me. So I went to adoration, and I probably wasn't the first time, but at some point my parish had it once a month. And so as a teenager, I was like, once a month they have it, once a month I'll go. And after basketball practice, I'd go over to the church and I'd, spend some time in adoration. But what I realized in that, this is like the next kind of big key moment for me, that the Jesus that I talk to in my room is the Jesus that's here in the Eucharist. And so it was like I had been talking to him on the phone for my whole life, and I suddenly realized we could meet up and like spend time together. It was this revelatory moment that's the reality. But I didn't even know that was possible. It'd be like not even realizing that you could meet up and talk to someone because you're just so used to talking on the phone. That's the only way you've ever spoken to them. So that was really critical for me at that point. And I was starting to discern religious life. I was aware that sisters existed in the church, and I was wondering if that's what God wanted for my life. And I was open to that, but I didn't know kind of what to do or how to go about that. And so I would go, when I was in adoration, I would just ask the Lord, like, what are your plans for my life? I'm getting closer to the end of secondary school here, and I probably need to, if I'm supposed to enter a convent, like, you got to tell me, because I'm getting close to 18. And so in adoration, at one point, there was just this, once again, not an audible voice or anything like that, but just this clarity that came for me. The Lord was like, my plans for you might be to be a religious. All I'm asking of you is to be open to that. I'm not asking you to enter a convent tomorrow. And it just was this like pressure off and sense of like, okay, there was the easiest yes of my life. Like, I want whatever your plans are for my life are going to make me happy. So I want that. So yeah, I can try to be open to that. and I don't have to enter a convent tomorrow. That's really helpful. I'll go on and study civil engineering like I want to. And so that gave me that clarity at that time about university. And I went on, I studied civil engineering. I loved it. And while I was doing that, I just knew I'm just supposed to keep my heart open, that if Jesus is calling me to this, that I'm just open to it. And sure enough, that just grew over time. That as I was then in university and I'm studying and I'm remaining open to the religious life, the Lord was just drawing my heart.
And are you praying?
I was praying.
At university?
I was praying. I was really involved with the different Catholic society events and things on campus. I had a spiritual director at that point, meeting with him every month, a priest on campus. I was going to daily mass at university. And I had a friend. This was the other thing that was an incredible blessing. I met on one of the first days I was there, I was living on campus, a young woman who was also discerning religious life. And she came up to me and she said, we'd never spoken. We'd seen each other at daily mass like once or twice on campus. And then we were at this, she was playing volleyball. Her friends had met up to play volleyball. She was a couple of years ahead of me. And they had invited me to come. So I came, but I was a little bit late. So I was sitting on the side waiting for the next game to start. And she just saw me there and it finished and everyone was going to mix up teams or whatever. So she just came over to say hi. But she came over. We hadn't spoken to each other yet off. And she walks right up to me and she says, "You love Jesus, don't you?" And I was like, "Hi, my name is?" And I was like, "Yes." And it was just this sense of we became best friends immediately. Wow. And then, within the next day, she then was like, "Are you discerning religious life?" I was like, "Yes." And so this beautiful gift, because it's not familiar to many people what it is to discern religious life or how to do that. And
how did she know?
Well, because she was discerning and she saw me. And I think it was just the sense of we might have that in common.
Yeah. Someone to walk with.
And it was such a gift.
Did she ask you a list of 100 questions and these were just 2 of them?
That was the only question she asked. And she's never gone up to anybody and introduced herself in that way ever.
Wow.
And she and I had the blessing of having that, of knowing someone else who's discerning and being able to walk together. And we thought that was pretty amazing. We then came on our first come and see weekend. When you're discerning, you might go and visit, go on a come and see weekend to see what it's like. We did that together to visit our sisters in New York from university. We traveled and we did that together. And it ended up being that we both entered the CFR sisters and made final vows together.
Oh,
so we
you're making me cry, sister.
It's the most beautiful story. And we all along the way, we're like, isn't this amazing? We'd have someone else who's discerning. Isn't it amazing? We'd have someone else to go on a come and see with. Isn't it amazing that we might discern the same community? We never in a million years thought God would be that good. Yeah. That maybe he'd call us to the same community. But God is that good. God is good. Nothing is beyond him. Yeah. And so that gift of wow, that one of my best friends in the whole wide world is my sister forever. And that gift of the journey together has been also just a beautiful blessing and also a support in terms of my own vocation and coming to find it. So
where is she now?
She's in England in Leeds.
Oh,
so she's not that far away.
Nope. So,
and are you part of the same province?
So we don't have provinces actually at this point. So there's only at this point 34 CFR sisters in the whole world, which is rather a small number. So
it's still a lot.
So we don't have provinces yet at all. We're just in the same time zone, which is nice.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah,
that's so good. Yeah. Some of the stuff you talked about, I just want to go back to. If a person is hearing this podcast and they're listening to Sister Kelly Francis talking about, a couple of things you said, God spoke to you clearly. How does a person invite God to speak to them clearly? What advice would you give?
Well, definitely ask him, Lord, I want to hear. I was asking, Lord, what are your plans for me? And give time for silence in your life. And that's silence without your phone. No offense about the cars.
Yeah, totally.
Silence,
that's where I was getting at.
Silence without your phone is definitely important. And so being able to have space for God to speak where you are able to listen and hear. And then it's to surrender a time frame. So we might want God to do what we want, how we want, and to be able to go Lord, you're God and I'm not, in fact. And so
Strange as that might seem.
I know. Funny as that is, but I'm available. I'm listening. I want to hear your voice about whatever you're wanting to say to me. Not like you can only speak to me about this topic because this is what I really, really, really want to know. And everything else is, I'm not really available to talk about any of that other stuff. No, let him initiate, let him bring up the topic and the direction and the timing and all of it. But we have to be disposed. We have to be available, and we need to remove the things that block us from hearing God's voice. So, living a sacramental life, going to confession regularly so that we're not living like steeped in sin and then it's like all blocked up. And having that regular prayer time, contact with the scriptures, that we're actually, praying with his word, listening for what's said there. We know these things kind of, but also it can be helpful to hear them again.
Yeah. And sometimes God gets clouded out, but you were brought to your bed essentially in your room by suffering.
Yeah.
Your reflection and your reflection time grew out of that time of suffering in your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that is something that I'm so grateful for, that I learned then and I learned a few times since, in particular ways that I think all of us need to learn, that the difficult moments in our life are moments of grace, and that God brings good out of suffering. And that's the story of the cross. Like, we look at the crucifix and we know that's not the end of the story, because of the resurrection is what it's, led to and what comes forth. And that's also in our own lives, that like there are times, and sometimes it can be prolonged periods of time, very mysterious, like we can't reconcile, we can't figure it out, periods of time that were hard, challenging, suffering, difficult in whatever way. But there's grace, and there's new life that's meant to come from that in our Christian.
And would you advise somebody to offer up their suffering? I'm just going to offer it up and white knuckle it. Or what would you say to somebody who's in the middle of a difficult period, or they could see the onset of a difficulty, say they've got a diagnosis or whatever it is that has come to visit them at their door? How do they handle that in a way that gives glory to God and maybe gives them an opportunity to become his friend?
There's not one way to do it. I think that's important to remember, because if you're like me, if you have any remote engineering tendencies in you, you might like a formula, and this is the one way. There's not one way. So the most important thing is really to be led by God through your suffering. That meaning, like, he might want certain things, but there's definitely tried and true things that are helpful. So I don't want to not acknowledge that, but I don't want it to sound like this is, you do this and then that, and you ticked all the boxes and you're all set. That there's not just one way, and it really, the Lord wants to lead us in our life. And that's really the dynamic that he wants over and over, is like, can we be in relationship here versus have this be a formula? He wants a relationship, and we want tick the box and I'm good. And he's like, but I want you. I don't want just what you do.
It's the rich young man, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do I have to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure you weren't back then as a teenager where you are now, or an 11-year-old where you are now in your prayer life. I'm sure your prayer was pretty abysmal. Very
elementary.
And you went to adoration once a month.
As a 17-year-old, not an 11-year-old, I'd never heard of adoration. And, so yeah, absolutely. No, my prayer life was very simple, as an 11-year-old. So that's why I wasn't praying in my room. I was just recounting my woes to the thin air. Like there was no sense of like, I'm sharing this with God or I'm offering this up. None of that was going on for me. I was just, that was a hard day, and I'm going to, think it through to try to process what happened. And
did you find thinking it through helpful?
I think so.
I think it would have to be, because a lot of times we don't take time to think of or to process things.
It was to process it and to be aware of what was going on and how I was feeling in the midst of it. And for me, I'm a like, okay, well, how do I want to respond to that next time? That's my natural tendency, is to kind of review and then make a resolution or a sense for the future. Now, like, there wasn't much I could change, but it also was helpful to me to go like, okay, well, maybe, because for me, I'm an introvert and I'm naturally a shy person. So it was there were little resolutions of, well, maybe I should try to, there's that girl over there. Maybe I should talk to her. I should, there were simple things like that at that point, I'm sure I was kind of reflecting on my day of part of what was causing what was happening. And therefore could I do something? Now it was all very elementary, and I was not praying necessarily. I wasn't offering it
but
up.
At least you were doing, what we used to do when we were young as well, was we just didn't expect immediate results. We didn't want our pain to be solved immediately by phoning a friend and finding out, what the friend's advice was or whatever. We had to go through it.
Yeah, exactly. I had to go through it. And I also wasn't, I think nowadays it's much easier to kind of numb yourself to it by, once again, like we didn't, as I shared earlier, like it wasn't like I was watching tons of films or doing all these other things that are kind of like escape, can be an escape from the reality before you. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't, by nature of the way my parents raised us, we didn't have like access to those kinds of, I wasn't on computer games all the time or other things like that either. And so there was this sense of, facing the reality that's before me and going through it and going. And I think that's an important piece is it's a struggle, it's a suffering, it's difficult, but we want to actually, if we're going to go through it well, we actually have to face it for what it is, as opposed to numb ourselves to it or try to kind of avoid it and wait for it to just go away.
So you're rationalizing it and trying to find solutions. And sometimes we just get stuck in the pain instead of like standing back and going, well, okay. And also I think it's good to actually say, well, that was not nice. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we can just say, oh, that didn't really happen, but no, that's not nice. But what am I going to do now? Yeah, it's really good.
And sometimes we just got to go through the pain, regardless of how we deal with it or what we're going to do the next time. We just got to go through the pain.
Yeah, it's not nice.
It sounds like your parents were pretty hardcore. Like even of the time, like we're older than you. I think, I pretty assume we are by the looks of you. I'm like, she says she's an introvert. She's no more, but obviously you are an extroverted introvert. Joyful introvert. But it sounds like your parents had it together in terms of how they raised you guys. Like they sent you to external schools. Like you were not educated at home.
Yeah.
The sort of stuff you're saying is the sort of stuff that I would expect to hear from somebody who was homeschooled, frankly. But you were not homeschooled. Yet there was space there through the denial of certain tools, shall we say, like Xbox or whatever it was at the time, Atari, that would be normal. Mm-hmm. Even if, your parents couldn't afford it, they're not that expensive, so it was a choice clearly that
it was definitely a choice. It was a deliberate parenting choice versus we can't afford this or, we're going to absolutely. That's what I really am so grateful. My parents really parented us. There's no doubt about it that I experienced having a father and a mother who were very present and very intentional in the way that they raised us and what they wanted, what they were about in terms of imparting to us what would be helpful for our lives. And like I said, I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that. And I see.
Did you always appreciate that?
I found it hard, but I did appreciate it because I saw in my friends who had everything that they wanted and yet nothing, that they loved coming over my house for a family game night, and their families never had a family game night and ours did all the time. And so it didn't really matter if anybody else came over or not, because we had enough people that we could have our own family game night just of ourselves. But if one of our friends came over, they were just part of the family. They just did what the family was doing. And, so I saw that, but I have a distinct memory. So as a teenager, just lest I should sound like I'm a total holy Joe, as we'd say. There was a point as a teenager where one of my friends was having like a sleepover, and it was kind of at the last minute that she was putting it all together. And it was a Saturday evening, and she called to see if I could come, and I wasn't going to be able to go to mass the next morning. And we'd missed like the vigil mass time slot. And so my parents were like, no, you can't go. You're going to miss mass. And I was like, well, can't I just miss? And I remember asking it was the only time in my life that I remember asking, can I just miss? Like, we go every single Sunday. Can I just miss Mass this weekend? Like, you know? And they said no. And I'm so grateful. And I've gone back and told them this, you know, from the perspective of now. I don't think I thanked them in the moment, but I accepted it in the moment. I didn't try to sneak out or something else either. And I knew in the moment, this is right. This is them helping me to do what's right when I would be doing what's wrong. And I know that it's wrong. I knew that I should be going to Mass, you know, whatever age of teenager I was, I knew that enough. And, but I was tempted. I was being tempted, and it was beyond, I was asking for what was wrong. And they just were very clear. And they're like, it's not that you can't sleep over at her house. It's not, but the timing, like if it had planned earlier, we would have happily brought you to the vigil Mass, and then you could go after, but it's just not going to be possible. And it's more important for you to be at Mass on Sunday. And I'm so, I remember that moment. I remember that experience. I remember not liking it in the moment, but I also remember thinking, I have real parents. They love me this much. Like, I knew it was love. I knew it wasn't just them being like, now I'm sure, like I said, I didn't say that then to them, but I felt it.
I had a very similar experience as a teenager. I wanted to go into town. All my friends were hanging out, and we were not allowed to hang around the town. And I remember actually slamming a door and running outside to the garden, and there was a shed out the back, and, you know, hiding behind the shed and crying. But deep inside me, I was grateful that they cared enough to not let me go. Isn't it funny how you can have both of those going on at the same time? Yeah.
Did you kick back at all whenever your parents denied your requests?
Kick back. You know, it was rare that they denied my request, because I think I had been formed so much from when I was small that, like, I generally didn't ask for things that were kind of like really.
You knew better.
You know? Yeah. So that's a particular moment, because I really was asking for something which obviously was not good for me. But there weren't a lot of times that I was clamoring for things, because I just wasn't interested, to be honest. Like, I didn't really want the things that, I wasn't like, why don't we have an Xbox? Like, come on. I was kind of like, yeah, take it or leave it. Like, I don't, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, like, there were definitely, yeah, I might have been like, oh, I really want to watch this, like, TV program or this thing, and maybe, but it was not that often. And it was clear. My parents were clear once something was kind of, if I asked and it was clear what, like yes or no and why, I knew, like, if I bang on the door enough times, it wasn't going to change. Like, they were clear with me, and they were firm when there was something. And I knew why I wasn't watching this or why I wasn't doing that. It wasn't like they just were kind of like whimsical about it, and I just was like, this is unreasonable. Totally. It was like, I know what their principles are. I know why they're deciding this way. So if there was something where I was like, I'm going to ask them for this, and I knew it was kind of like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, I knew why I was not sure. But that didn't happen that often, because I was being formed that I had the same values and the sense of like what's important to me and what's not. And so, yeah. Yeah. So I so generally good. Was, yeah.
This is like a parenting course for Sheena and myself.
I'm like, yeah, this is honestly, funny.
Because we're
bring
like,
the nun on to talk about parenting.
No, this is so good, because we're getting the benefit of your parents' principles and such. And you know, how it affected you, and we're being reminded, you know, we still have kids at home, one kid at home who's like of a parenting age, and we need to be reminded of what our call is, but also what the principles are in which we are parenting. And yeah,
I was thinking the same thing. But I'd love to know then why you chose the order you eventually.
Well, why didn't I get married and have a family? This is the question. I always thought I was going to grow up and get married and have a family.
Oh.
Really?
Because I loved my family so much. I had such a beautiful experience of family life, and I love children. I babysat like all the time. And so it was kind of like this thing of like, it would be the most natural thing. But it's all connected into what you're asking there. So I have loved St. Francis for many years, and I got to know him as an early teen. I think it was 12, 13 maybe. My sister had gone on a trip, and she had gone to Assisi, and she came back with a tau cross, and she gave it to me. And I started wearing a tau cross. I put it on and I never took it off. I wore it for the rest of my life from then.
Inside or outside?
Outside. Oh yeah. Oh
Wow.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I yeah.
You were hardcore.
I was happy as I was. I was just, if something was me, it was me. I never worried, like, well, not never worried, but I was really happy as I was. So yeah, no, I just wore it with whatever I was wearing. And so that started this like connection with St. Francis that I felt very strongly right away when I got that tau cross. And then we have confirmation a bit later in the States, or where I was, at least it's different all over the States. But so I was confirmed, I think 15 or something. And I chose St. Francis of Assisi as my confirmation saint then. And once again, just felt close to him. And I experienced this draw. It was his gospel life, that he would hear the stories in the gospel and he would just, it resonated and he just wanted to live that. He just, go sell what you have, give to the poor and follow me. And he was like, great, I'm going to do that. And he just literally did it. That there was something that was like, that's what I want. Like and I just was like, there's something there for me. So I didn't at that point equate, I'm wearing a tau cross and therefore I'm going to become a sister. It was just, I just liked St. Francis. And then it was, as I already shared, as I went on in my teenage years and was discerning a bit more, wondering what way to go after secondary school and into university and all that I was thinking, well, if I was going to be a sister, I'm having my heart open to that. So the Lord was asking, the first place I would look is the Franciscans, just because I've already got, that's really, that's who I have the connection with. And I love everything I know about the way he lived and the way he responded to his call. It resonates. So for me, that was a good place to start. Now there's 500 bajillion million Franciscans in the world, so it didn't narrow it down that much, but I knew I wasn't going to look at the Dominicans. So that was helpful. And then I actually did like as many young people have done when they're discerning, but they're not really talking about it very publicly. You do like a secret internet search when no one's looking, and you try to like see what community you might be interested in. And I did that, and I narrowed out every community in the whole wide world. And I was like, well, that was unfortunate. And so I had a friend, I got to know him. He was a seminarian who was based at our parish when I was a teenager. And then subsequently, when he was ordained, I was still in contact with him. And I was home for Christmas, probably from university. And he got in contact and he said, he's newly assigned new parish. He's like, come by while you're home for Christmas for Mass and we'll get a cup of coffee afterwards and catch up. And so I did. And as I'm talking with him, he's like, so are you still discerning? And I said, yes. And he said, well, do you have a community that you're thinking to, be in contact with or visit or something like that? No, he said, did you ever think of visiting a convent or talking to a sister? And I was like, well, no, that's like a crazy idea. Why would I do that? I'm just going to like secretly discern in my own world. Right. And I was like, oh, that's actually a good point. And he said, well, why don't you get in contact? And I said, well, I've narrowed out every community in the whole wide world. And he was like, what are you looking for that's so impossible to find? So I described what I was looking for, which I explained, that I thought Franciscans would be a good place to start. And I was looking for authentic Franciscan life. I was looking to serve the poor. I was really drawn to service to the poor at that point. I also knew that Eucharistic adoration and daily Mass would be really important. And so I basically described the CFR sisters, and I know why they got narrowed out in my big search is because they were in New York City. And I never wanted to even go to New York City, never mind live there. So I'm sure that if I saw that, I must have immediately dismissed it as, well, I don't want to go to New York City. So anyway, he had discerned the friars, and so he knew of the CFRs. And so I was so grateful. He once I described my little like Franciscans and service of the poor and, Mass and adoration, he said, what about the CFR sisters? And I said, I don't know, who are they? And he brought me to the website, and actually, it's very endearing. This is to prove to you that I actually am quite shy. I know Tony doesn't really believe me, that I'm actually an introvert, but he showed me their website, described the community. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. He's like, look, here's the vocation directress, her name and phone number right here. He's like, why don't you give her a call? And he was like, and he said that to me, and I said, and he just looked at me and he said, do you think you want to write it down and give her a call? And then he looked at me again and he went, do you need me to call her for you? And I said,
wow.
Yes. And he did.
Wow.
And she called me.
Isn't that so interesting?
And it was very helpful.
Thanks be to God.
So thank God for Father Patrick. And yes, that's how I got in contact with the sisters and found out about our community.
Gosh, I wonder how many people have a vocation who couldn't make the call.
Yeah. That's why we now have a form that you can fill in on our webpage if you want to discern with us.
Wow.
And we can then reach out and get in contact, because picking up the phone to call a convent could be intimidating.
Yeah.
And
that was
I
back
get that.
before texts.
That was, exactly.
Long before WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Quick question for you now. Like, do you own anything?
The technical answer or the real answer?
Give us like your parents the principle, and then what the reality is like.
Sure. No. So the reality is that I don't. I've given up everything, and vow of poverty, vow of obedience, vow of chastity. I've made my vows, and I have nothing. I actually gave up all my things before I entered. Most people wait till final vows to do that. I knew once I met the community and was preparing to enter, it didn't occur to me that like I might not stay.
You might need your stuff.
I might need. So I literally gave everything away before I entered. But anyway, definitely by final vows, that's a need. So yeah, I have nothing to my name at this point. In
and
that
what does
regard.
that actually look like? Like, when did you notice that being a reality in your life? And what was the impact of that?
When did I notice the reality of not owning anything?
Not owning anything, and like to describe that for somebody who can buy stuff.
Yeah.
And has stuff.
So I love it, actually. And this is part of the fact that I was so excited to give all my stuff away before I even entered. And like,
did you have much stuff?
No, I didn't have that much stuff, but I had a bank account and it had money in it. Cause I really, I was the type of person who, like, if someone gave me money for my birthday, I would like put it in my bank account and then would have it for when I would want to use it for something. I wouldn't just like spend it immediately and it would be gone within 3 seconds. So I did have, not that it was like that much, but I actually did have a bank account with money in it, and I happily gave that away.
Do you have a bank account now?
We have a community bank account now. So that's where the like technicality part comes in.
Okay, but you don't personally have
No, I have no personal bank account. I have no personal things that belong to me personally, but there are things that belong to the community that I have use of. And that's how that works for us as Franciscans. It's not like we have cars. I drove up here today, but it's not my car. It's the community's car, but I have use of it for when we need a car for things.
So I'm going to London tomorrow to buy a car for Net because the one that we have is broken down, or one of the ones that we have is broken down.
One of the many broken.
Yeah. And if anybody feels called to donate to Net for purchase of new vehicles, we will happily take your help. Thank you very much. But the reality is we have a little bit of money set aside. I can go over to London to do that. If the same thing happens to you guys, if one of your cars breaks down, what do you do?
If one of our cars breaks down, we either see if we can repair it.
We did that multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. That's the normal course for human beings. But if we need to get a new car, I think that's maybe what you're asking. If it's the point where you're like, now we need a new car, we beg for it. That's how we get everything that we have. So we rely on divine providence and we ask people for our needs.
And so what does begging look like? Hinting hard, saying, hey, did you hear our car broke down? Or is it
We'd put out the word to people that either we might know someone who said, sister, if you ever need anything, like, let me know. Or we might know someone who'd be in a position that they might be able to help us in that way. Or we might, amongst the community, like let the other sisters, it's not as applicable here in Ireland. Maybe we talk to the brothers in Limerick. But like in the States, we'd say to the other brother, do you know anybody who's got a car that they're wanting to donate? Because as people get to know that that's how we live, then they'll say, oh, I'm getting rid of a car. Do you think anybody needs it? And so that friary might be like, no, but they'll be like, let's check with the sisters. They might, or vice versa. So there can be a sense of once people know this is the way you live, then there kind of can be a means of communication in that way. At certain places, like maybe the parish would let you put it into the bulletin to say, the sisters are in need of a new vehicle. If you'd like to help them, please contact, or, some things, ways like that.
And I don't mean to be too intrusive in asking this question, but in terms of where you live, do you have to beg for a place as well? So,
we don't own the places that we live. That's in our, in our constitutions. So we, usually we would approach the diocese where we are and see if there's, at this point in the church, there's often many religious houses that are no longer in use. So that would be kind of a typical way to approach that. But we would take on the care for it, but we wouldn't take on the ownership. So if the diocese was like, we'll sell this to you, we'd be like, we're not actually looking to buy it, but we'd like to be able to live there. We may or may not need to pay rent or other things, but we definitely would always care for the upkeep. We'd be like, we'll care for all of the repairs and all of that we take on the responsibility for where we're living, but we wouldn't own it. And that way, if the church ever came to us and said, we need that building for something else, great, we'll move out, and like, that's the Franciscan sense of like, you want us here? Great, we'll be here. You don't want us here anymore? Okay, we'll go somewhere else. Or, that gospel living.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty hardcore. Hardcore is the theme of the day, the theme of this podcast. Getting involved in ministry at the start full time many years ago, one of the things that really struck me as being counter to the gospel is when dioceses rent buildings out to religious orders or things like that. I'm like, how does that even work? Is that even okay? And I'm sure it is okay, and I'm sure it's fine. But it was just something that struck me deep within, that this is something that doesn't appear to me to be in line with Jesus' gospel teaching. That we're meant to be helping each other out. It doesn't matter if a certain order owns this and another order needs it. You don't need rent or money to take place between the two. We're all in this together.
We don't know
and
what
not
the
to judge.
circumstances are.
There's a lot more history there and orders that have existed for 800 years than my few years in ministry. But certainly for me, my sense of that was just, this doesn't make sense to me. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Wow. I never knew that you guys, so like for eating and it's all donated?
All donated. Yeah.
Wow.
Like the meal you just donated to me tonight, that was delicious. But yeah, no, the everything, all the food we have, everything, our money, but also our stuff. Like I and I needed a new pair of shoes. I actually asked someone to donate it to me. So all of our needs, everything. Now people do give us money, and we can use that money sometimes, like for specific needs. Like I need to go to the pharmacy. I don't go in and say like, can I please get some cough syrup? And will you please donate that to me? I can take, money to go and pay for the cough syrup or whatever it is. But does
it ever get tight?
It can do. It can do. Yeah, absolutely. But I've never missed a meal.
Okay.
Sometimes it's more our preferences is more how we feel it, is that sense of like, we have what we've been given. And so I might really want to make this or that for dinner, but we might have something else. And that's good for us. It's really good for us. Maybe my favorite fruit or vegetable is this, and we might not get it that often, but then when we do, I feel so loved by God, when that comes in. And it's just this experience of everything comes to us from God, which we know, which is, you're living that too. But we live it in a radical way that's meant to be a witness to the whole world of like, everything everybody has is from God. Like you don't have something of your own. It really all belongs to him and has been given to us by him. And we manifest that in a particular way in our Franciscan CFR way of life.
Your radical poverty is written on your face. The witness and the fruit of that is written on your face in terms of the joy. And I've said this to you many times. The joy that you have is not the joy that a person experiences. Like for me, when I get the newest car, I never buy new cars, but the car that I really hanker for, I've liked for a long time, and I get it, and I'm like, it's a different sort of a joy written on your face.
I love my life. I love my vocation. There's no other way I'd want to be living. There's nowhere else I'd want to be living. There's no other way I'd want to be living it. It's, for me, this is what God has made me for. This is what he had in mind from, when he first thought of me. This was his plan for my life. And this is what makes me happy.
Yeah.
Like this is I still experience that to be very true. This is God's plan for my life. So this is what makes me happy. And I've experienced that in a really beautiful, like there's always just more. So I've been very happy in my vocation for many, many, many years. But this past year, a few months ago, I was on retreat And it was this beautiful, it was a week-long retreat. And I was just silence and praying with the scriptures every day. And I experienced this abundance of gratitude for my vocation and for my life. And this kind of new experience of deeper level, I guess, of just joy in how much I love my life. And it sounds funny. I was saying to someone recently, I almost feel like I kind of have to apologize for it when I say it to people, like it makes them uncomfortable. I don't think it makes you all uncomfortable, but some people you like share your joy and it can make them uncomfortable that you're so happy with nothing. Like I have nothing that the world tells me I need. And yet I have everything. I have more than I could ever need, want, or desire. I have God, and I have a relationship with him, and I have the beautiful gift of my vocation and our life of prayer, our life in community, the beautiful ministries we have in all the different apostolates, what we're blessed with, the people I get to meet and know, and the ways I get to like spend my time. I just am like, there's nothing better. There's nothing else I would ever want to be doing. I have an immense amount of joy, and all I can say is thank you, Jesus. Like all you can, it's just gratitude. All that you can have from there is just gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Jesus like? What is he like?
I mean, Jesus is my best friend, as he has been since I was 11. And so he's like a best friend. That's what he's like. And I think he knows each of us so personally that he's like that best friend for each one of us. That, some people you're attracted to and some people you're not, but somebody else really likes them and you're like, I don't know what they see in them, but they see something. So that sense of, it's hard to just like box Jesus in and just saying like, well, he's like this because, well, for someone else, he might be a slightly different way because has that capacity. He's God. And so he has that capacity to relate with each of us in that personal, individual, exactly who is the best friend for us. So I find that hard to then answer in such in a straightforward manner. That was a very unstraightforward answer to that question.
It's a good answer. Yeah. And what do you think of us? What do you think of the Irish? Sister Kelly Francis.
I love the Irish. First of all, I just have to say, I have had a love for the church here since before I was a sister and before I ever thought of coming here. I was asked to come here. We opened our mission here 12 years ago now. And I was asked to come as part of the first group that came to open the convent in Drogheda. And it was the most like, wow, I get to go to Ireland. I actually get to live in Ireland as a missionary. Like, wow. Ireland is a beautiful country in its rugged beauty of the natural elements and in the people. And I find what I'm most edified by over and over again in the virtues of the Irish is, the infamous Irish welcome, which is real and which is Christian at its very core. To be so welcoming and to be that way with stranger and with friend and with in all different ways. I just see the Christian virtue at the heart and the core of that. And I've experienced that so beautifully over and over and over again, all around this country, so many times in so many ways. I also love the hardiness. The Irish have been through so much, and as Americans, I feel like if we're going to start talking about if we're going to talk about the Irish, I'm also going to have to acknowledge as Americans we can be a bit superficial, and we're so young as a country that we don't have perspective. And I find here, I feel it. And it's like in the water and in the earth and in the bones, this sense of perspective of the long suffering and of the long history and of the sense of depth of person and of character and of way of being. And I find that in this culture that really, I love that. I really am not good with the superficial. Small talk is like the most painful thing for me in the world, but a real hearty, authentic conversation is a blessing to me and something I really love. And I find there's a beautiful depth. There's a beautiful depth here.
Thank you for
and not
that.
not without suffering, like I said.
Yeah, totally. We suffered.
But
and also, when we went abroad, we didn't go abroad to conquer the countries that we visited. We went abroad with a humility, and we brought the faith with us abroad, both as lay people and as priests and nuns. We brought the faith with us. We came with gifts. We didn't come looking to take. We came with gifts. Mm-hmm. And that is something it redounds to us. It's to our benefit. And it's something that we will, as a country and as a culture, that I think God will bless us. He is blessing us for that. We're suffering at the minute. I think we're reaching the end of that long suffering period, or certainly this trial. And I definitely see things on the up. Mm. Not everybody's got the memo, but it's I definitely think it's on the up.
I'm curious why you ended up in Drogheda.
It's a great question, and it has to do with kind of the missionary spirit you were just alluding to, which would have been my third beautiful attribute of the Irish, but I don't have to go into that too much now. Mm-hmm. But so what happened was Cardinal Timothy Dolan is the Cardinal Archbishop of New York currently, and that's where our community began, and we're very close with him. As a boy, he was living in Baldwin, Missouri, and he remembers the Mercy Sisters from Drogheda arriving in his hometown, stinky, small Baldwin, Missouri, middle of nowhere, to open up a convent school there. And he went to that school, and he was taught by the Irish sisters who came. And one of them is still living. She just turned 100 last year, Sister Bosco Daly, she's in Tullamore at the moment. And she taught him actually several different times during his primary school. And he said after his parents, she has had the greatest impact on his life and his vocation, the next person after his parents. Wow. And so he still is very close with her. She was at his priestly ordination, his Episcopal ordination, his being made a cardinal. She's been he visits her every year here and just maintains this beautiful relationship with her. And so anyway, after she had been missioned in the U.S. for a while, she then ended up being sent back to Drogheda, and she was living in Drogheda again. And at that point, the Mercy Sisters had been there was a massive big convent on the Dublin Road that they had been living in for years. And then there was less and less of them. So they purpose built a smaller convent. They called it the Garden Convent. It was in the garden of the big convent. And so she was then living in the Garden Convent, and there were dwindling in numbers and some of them needing more care and things like that. And so they were going to be closing that convent. And so she rang the cardinal and spoke with him and said, this was the day, the last mass that they had in the Garden Convent. And she said, we just blew out the sanctuary candle. We're moving tomorrow. Mm. And then that was it. And she was in tears and he was in tears. Mm. And he said, oh, gosh, I wonder if there's something we could ever do. The church in Ireland, the missionaries from Ireland have done so much for us here in the United States. Like they're just the church in the States, missionaries, Irish priests, Irish nuns everywhere have really done so much. And he said, the church, as he was aware, as we were all aware, there's needs here now. And so he approached our superior of our whole community, and he said, would you ever consider opening a mission in Ireland? And she said, it was Mother Lucille Catrone who passed away last year around this time. But she was the superior at that time. And she said, I've actually been wanting to have us open a convent in Ireland. I would love that. Wow. And he said, well, would you ever go to Drogheda? And so it was his idea. He spoke with Bishop Michael Smith, who's now the retired Bishop of Meath. And they had been close for many years. And Bishop Smith was very happy to extend the invitation to us to come. And so anyway, that's why Drogheda and the whole story, and that sense of we're living in that convent now, and the beautiful gift of what that, as it is sometimes called, that blessed cycle of evangelization, that where the church has needs, like we come to support. And so in the United States for a long time, the church needed the missionaries to be coming there to begin the church and build up the church there, because the country there being so new and so young. And then now the church in Ireland needing missionaries from the United States
Absolutely.
to come back. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's our story, and
it's similar to our story with Net.
Very similar to our story with Net. You know, it's young people who feel inspired by God. They feel an attraction to Ireland often, and there's Irish as well, but who come here because of that, because they have an Irish name, or they've, you know, their parents have talk about an Irish priest or whatever it is that they've been impacted by in their lives.
So what do you guys do then in your parish?
So it's an interesting dynamic. So we're in the parish of St. Mary's in Drogheda, but we're not parish-based sisters, which would be the familiar kind of way for sisters to be here. So we do some things very locally there, and then we're also here for like the whole country. So it's a beautiful dynamic for us. We love that. But there in Drogheda, we have a youth group for secondary school students. That's our kind of biggest ministry at this point. Once a week, we have teenagers come a Thursday evening, and that's just grown over the years. It's been about 10 years now that we've been having the youth group, and it's now a beautiful, vibrant place for teenagers who really want faith, and they want more of it, and they want to go deeper, and they want to share their faith with their friends, and they want us to help them to be able to do that, you know.
Thanks be to God.
It's a really a beautiful blessing for us to have them involved, and to be able to accompany them in their faith in that way. And then we hands-on work with the poor is also a really evangelization and hands-on work with the poor. That's our twofold works, and takes a lot of different forms in different places. But so our ministry of the poor is often very hidden here. It's getting to know families or individuals who are in particular need, and we often visit them in their homes. That's the most kind of helpful for them, and we'll bring them maybe a food parcel, or just spend time with them and get to know what their struggles are and what their needs are. So that also is a very beautiful ministry, but often very hidden. I mean, who sees or knows that, and it's not something you're going to advertise. You know, like we went to visit so and so. But then. We're blessed to be able to be in the primary school, the parish primary school. We go in once a week, and we're with the children there. It's one of the biggest in the country. There's over 1,000 children in the school, but we kind of take it in pieces, class by class, and spend time with them, and just to help them. Really, our desires, in being in there, because they obviously have religion, is somewhat taught in the school there, but for us to be able to help them as our witness of our faith and our encounter with our own relationship with Jesus, that they would help them to know who Jesus is, and to encounter him. So that's a blessing for us to be able to be in school with them. And then it's a lot further afield. So we run a young adult ministry for the diocese. We also do help out with retreats and different things around the country. We have a pro-life ministry. We're really involved in especially praying for the cause of pro-life. We do that in Dublin once a month, where we lead a holy hour to pray for the protection of life here. It's a really important cause. It's very close to our hearts. So, a lot of different ways we're involved. And then a few years ago, we started a missionary program for young women who are discerning religious life, that if they want to be able to take a gap year, not unlike Net, but where they really want to focus on their discernment of their vocation, and be kind of receiving formation about that, and taking steps towards being more ready to enter a convent.
And not necessarily exclusively the CFR convent. Not
necessarily, exactly. It's certainly there are, it's more frequent that we're in contact with women who are discerning with us, but it doesn't have to be. And that there's a house that we have use of, the parish graciously has given us use of it for them to live in together for the year. They have a chapel there, and then they help us with our ministries, and we give them classes and formation and things like that. So that's been also a newer development of a ministry for us. So that's a bit of what we're up to.
So it's like an elongated come and see.
It'd be more so even a sense that, like a come and see helps you to get to know a community in a particular way. But if there's this sense of like, I really might be called to religious life,
next step.
And it's like, well, how do I prepare myself for actually entering? Because it's a big step from living in the world to entering a convent. Can feel like quite a big step to try to just take, with the way the culture is right now, just so unsupportive of the Christian life in general. Yeah. So it's really to give a space for that, a bit of a detox from the world, and being able to, once again, like I said in my own story, knowing other people who are discerning and living in community with them. So helpful, so formative.
So do you still do your come and see weekends?
We do. Yeah. We still have come and see weekends. Absolutely. We do.
Okay.
Usually 4 times a year or so we'll have come and see weekends for women who are discerning with us and want to come for a visit and get to know us.
So you guys have a website or?
Exactly. Yeah. Franciscan CFR.com is our website. And yeah, there's a page for our convent, St. Anthony, and there's a page for discernment. For those who want to find out more about how to discern with us and steps to take, page about our missionary program.
I can tell my wife is wrapping up here.
No, I'm not. I just want people to know and be able to contact you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Yeah. I want to ask a question. You sound like you're pretty busy. How do you protect yourself from burning out, or the sisters are under your care?
Yeah, great question. I'm still learning that. I'm a relatively new superior. We call it the servant. And so certainly there's a lot to learn about the care for and protection of the life and the care for the sisters. And I'm definitely in the midst of learning all of that. And I think if you keep your first things first, as would be the case for anyone's life, that if you know what your priorities are. And so if prayer is a priority, then you make sure that's happening first, and you're not adding things in that are going to take away from you having the prayer that the Lord wants you to be having. Same thing for us. Like the pillars of our life are 3: prayer, community, apostolate, and they come in that order. So prayer comes first. If that's off, then everything else is off. And then community, that if I don't have time for my sisters, or if we're not spending time together and living our life in community, then it doesn't matter how great our ministry is or whatever we're doing. We don't have our first things first. So it's really...
And then your work, your apostolate.
Then it's, when we want to do what we can, we want to be as generous as we can. But we also, and there was a priest who was just talking about this recently too, we don't want to just do good things. We want to do what God's will is for us. Whoa. And that's the way to keep your priorities straight, is to go, Lord, is this what you want of me? And my responsibility as, the servant is this what you want of us, to be discerning that for the community, for the house as well. And obviously it's in conversation. There's consultation. The sisters were talking about it. I'm not just, I decide and you go do, or else but also I have a burden of responsibility as the superior, that I'm also, as parents would have, that,
this is parenting 101.
You really, you need to be looking at all of that and looking at, Lord, what do you want of me? What do you want of us? Not just like, is it a good thing? Because of course, if it's a bad thing, well, that makes the discernment really easy. Like, we're not going to go kill people. We're not going to but if it's a good thing, it's like, but is that your will for me? Or is that just a good thing?
Yeah. It's funny. We're very similar as a married couple in terms of God first, our relationship second, our kids next, then our apostolate, and then fun, but where it comes to the rubber hitting the road, it's like we have a polytunnel out there. It's a big ugly thing. We live in a beautiful house, but the polytunnel is super, super ugly. And I'm trying to figure out ways of making it less ugly. And the skin blew off it. And so it's even uglier. It looks like Chernobyl times 10. And anyway, my way of discerning the thing is talking to my wife, talking to other people, asking them questions, seeing where we're at with it. But you just hit the nail on the head. What is God's will for that place? I have a desire in my heart that I want to make it attractive. I don't have a lot of resource to actually make it attractive. I'm bouncing ideas off my wife to see what she thinks, and then the kids see what they think, and other people who are around. There was an architect here today. He had some ideas, but I didn't ask the question, God, ask him, what do you really want? And then there's a freedom there,
It takes a burden off us. We can feel like we have to figure everything out ourselves. And
amen.
In fact,
amen.
Yeah.
So Sheena, we can wrap it up.
This has been lovely. It's been really lovely. We usually ask one last question, and that is, in this particular season in your life, or this past week, or is there something that you feel the Lord is really revealing to you, or something that you've read that has really impacted you? Or
wow,
yeah,
that's a great question to ask.
That's a good question.
And what can I share about that? So I touched a little bit on, I think, the main theme that's been for like a season, which is that sense of joy and loving my life, and the permission to do that, and even that's God's will for me, like that He wants me to enjoy my life and to love it. And so I think what's coming from that for me now is the sense of And it's good for me to share that with others, that we can be reticent. We might be receiving something or having joy. But like I said, sometimes I always feel like I am apologizing that I'm happy or that something good, that I'm like, this was so beautiful. And I'm sorry to tell you, like, this is crazy. I don't want to live that way. So I'm really myself, like just trying to, in a not an unnatural way, but in a natural way to actually, when I have that thought of like, wow, I could share that, or I could not, go like, well, it's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing. Like, why wouldn't I share that? Why wouldn't I speak that out loud so that someone else will get to hear or know that? And so for me, it's like, it's not just experiencing the blessings of God, but it's to share the joy.
Interesting.
To share the joy.
And it's not your responsibility if it makes one person in 10 feel uncomfortable or one person in 100 feel uncomfortable. That's not on you. That might be stirring something in that person, that God will use eventually. It might be painful in the moment for that person, but God will use that eventually,
Oh, absolutely.
How about you, Tony?
I think just what Sister said, what is God's will for, what is God's will for us in our community in decision? Like, what is God's will for our ugly polytunnel that doesn't have a skin on it, like, what does he want us to do, and yeah.
Okay. For me, I think it's been reading the lives of the saints, like the really early church fathers, and particularly Saint Anthony of Egypt has been, and Saint Macrina, and I never heard of these people. And
who was Saint Macrina?
Saint Macrina was Saint Basil the Great and his brother Gregory's sister, and there's a whole bunch of other saints in that family.
Their parents were saints as well.
I think the mom. I'm not sure about the dad, but it was just. I actually cried reading Saint Macrina's story. It's just so beautiful. But Saint Anthony in particular, he went away and joined this monastery. For those who don't know about him, and he wanted to go away into the desert to be away from people, so he could just contemplate God. And the further he went away, the closer he got to God and contemplated his goodness and his love. And the greatest loving act that God did was he became man. And he came down from his mountain or out of his desert to be with the people. So he realized, oh, I actually need to be with the people. So it's contemplation and action. And for me, it was I think since COVID, it's been more contemplation and less action. And the name of the course is Light to the Nation. And like each of us is called to be that light, and I'm not saying that I'm great or anything, but that's what we're all called to be. And if we're hidden away in the desert, who's going to be the light? Yeah, so that's my revelation. And it's kind of help me to put into action, make those calls, meet people for coffees, nothing huge, just simply coming back out again. And I think a lot of people have gone into the desert since COVID and find it hard to find their way back out again. So that's my sharing.
Amen. Will you lead us in a prayer just to finish up?
Can I leave you with a little gift before I lead you in a prayer? As you're sharing about the saints.
How can the woman who has nothing give anything?
That's the thing. I have nothing and yet I have everything.
Amen.
But there's a song that I wrote about Saint Francis and my own call. And as you're sharing about the saints there, it's making me think there's Saint Francis, when he experienced God calling him, it was through the scriptures. And he responded, "This is what I want. It's what I seek. It's what I long for, like with all my heart." And he ran in pursuit of it. And like, that's what the saints do. That's like,
you want to sing it for us?
This is the song I want to sing for you.
Amen.
So it's called "This Is What I Seek." This is what I want. This is what I seek. It's what I long to do with all my heart. This is what I see. The Most High has revealed to me to live according to the Holy Gospel, to follow in the footsteps of Christ, and freely give as I have received his sacrificial love. This is what I want. This is what I see. It's what I long to do with all my heart. This is what I see. And so to Christ my life is informed. With him each day I carry my cross. I've nothing in this world of my own. A pilgrim with my heart set on heaven with Jesus. This is what I want. This is what I see. It's what I long to do with all my heart. This is what I see.
Amen.
Thank you.
And we do pray in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for the blessings that you have poured out upon us. And we thank you for this time now. We ask that you would be what you desire to be in each of our lives. And that we would respond to you like St. Francis and like all the saints. That our lives would be conformed to you and that we would grow closer and closer to you every single day in the vocations that you called us to, in the ways that places you have us, in the ways you're leading us. In Jesus' most holy name we pray.
Amen.
Father and Son.
Thank
Sister
you.
Kelly Francis, thank you. Wow, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
What a beautiful song. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's free. Share with your family and friends. Enjoy.